In this video, we will continue to talk about basic commands in Maya, and we are going to also start to work a little bit with more precision. We're gonna use some of the preferences to set up our software here and interface. We're going to use some units, and we will see how we can set up units. So I'm gonna start here by opening up the recent files. I'm gonna start to open up the previous scene where we imported a model from the renderpeople.com website. That's the model right there. Now, when you open up a scene, you just have to wait a little bit and the texture will show up if everything was imported in the correct manner as we saw in the previous video. So don't worry if you have some issues there, because we're going to talk about materials and textures later, so don't worry about that. But just to show you here, textures are showing because everything is set up okay. The project is set up okay, and you can check the previous video for that. Now I'm going to create here a cylinder. So each time I create an object, again, remember that it's going to be placed in the origin of your world. So it's 0, 0, 0. And here I am getting that right there. You can press F to frame the selected object right away. And we started to talk about movement and rotation and scale. So let's scale it real quick. First in 2D and then in 1D, so we can make it a little bit higher. And if you move it, if you double click also, you can get additional options. Now, if you move it here, that's gonna be right there on top of this pavement here. Okay, so we can check now this cylinder, and I'm going to deactivate the heads-up displays because they are a little bit too annoying here because they get into the way. Now, here you have some display settings at the top if you want to see only the 3D models, or if you want to check the textures or the wireframe, you can work with those. And you will also see that you have this really dense grid. The grid there is based on the grid settings, but also on the units and on some preferences that we're gonna see. So we have here the 4 default views, and this is one of the default views, and is the front view. And we can definitely see the grid here. So now let's go to one first object we can use is in the edit right here. So we saw what we can do in the file menu, and now we're gonna see also something else in the edit where we can copy paste and delete, create copies. But here in the create, we saw that we can actually start to create some objects and elements, and we have also these measures tools like the distance tool, which can be really handy to measure something real quick. Now again, we can do this approximately just by clicking on the screen, or we can do this more precise with the snaps, but we're gonna talk about snapping later. Now there you go. I have one locator. I need 2 clicks, 2 locator with the left mouse, and it's gonna generate that arrows, that line and that measure. So these are called dimension in other software. And you can see inside there, it's telling me 167. So again, this is a proof that we are working actually in centimeter. So by default, the units are centimeters. So when you create an object there, you can create it right away. So we created the cylinder right away, and then we scale it, but we add a model that we could take as a reference. So if I know that my people here, my woman, is 167, then I can like scale an object approximately. But if I don't want to do that, if I want to do things a little bit more precise, let's go now to the windows. This is where we get panels and where we can open up also different workspaces and the general editors here. So basically what we need to do, it's going directly here to the settings and preferences. This is where we set the preferences of this software. So if we click on preferences, we can either click there or down there if we go to in a specific location, but right now we need to go here. And so we can go also to the hotkeys if you want to check some of the shortcut keys used in Maya. And these are all settings that you can do. Now I'm just going to show you where they are, but you can do this later. I'm just going to show you that here you can set up colors, so you can customize all the user interface. I'm not going to do that because I want to keep it standard in order that everyone can understand. But when you are a little bit more expert, you can go here and customize basically anything about the colors, the UI, the plugins, and whatever. For example, if you use V-Ray or another render engine, you want to download it and install it, you can go here and activate it. From here, you're gonna set up loaded and auto load, and then you can use V-Ray. And if you're interested, we have videos and guides and video courses about the V-Ray render engine, but this is just an example. And also here you can see we can customize and then save our customized setup for the keys. So each time you customize, you usually have like a switch that lets you go in the default settings and in the customized settings. And here you can see that you can go here, for example, in editors and select a particular editor, and you can customize the keys for that particular editor, or in this case, this is the outliner. And you can check all the commands here. And these are the menus, so the drop-down menus. So if I go to File, I can see here, for example, to create a new file is Control-N. I can change that just by clicking there, and I can override that shortcut key. So I can see the command on the left side and see the shortcut key on the right side. And if I click on that, I can delete it, or I can override that just by clicking on the keyboard to record some different shortcut key. So you can really customize everything. Now, shortcut keys are pretty useful when you need to work faster. So when you get a little bit in expert mode, you can do that to work faster. Now, this is a series of videos where we are starting from the basics. So we do only beginner things, but when you're ready, you can get here, create your customization, save your presets. You can see here I've saved mine as JBD, and I can get any time to the default and then back to my customized, and everything is going to change. So everything is going to be then set up for my option or for the default. Okay, now let's proceed here in the preference panel. So here we can again customize things about the interface, things about the display. So for example, here we are in the interface, and you can see here we have a bunch of checkbox. So again, I'm not gonna go through all of this stuff, which is gonna be pretty advanced. Just gonna show you what you need for beginner settings or important things. So display also here, for example, let's see, something that can be useful settings. And yeah, you can change the up axis, for example, because in other software the Z is the up axis, and here we have the work units. So this is probably the most important thing right now. So we can see definitely that this is centimeter. So this is another proof that together with the measure that we did before, we actually are in centimeter. But we can change that if you are accustomed to work with millimeters, you can use millimeters. So also you can change to meters. Now you can see that the grid in the background is changing because it's kind of setting up itself using the centimeters. Now there are other ways also to set up the grid and the grid spacing, not only here, but also later on. I'm gonna show you how to do that. This is just to show you, not working with the grid or the snaps, just to show you how we can check out the units and be sure that when we create, for example, a cylinder that's gonna be high 40, that's gonna mean 40 centimeters basically. And you can change also the degrees there. Okay, so this is again some UE elements stuff. If you want like the status line, the shelf, or the command line, or the help line, you can activate or deactivate parts of the interface. Now also the help line, I think it's something you need to keep an eye on, because it's the bottom line which is gonna give you a lot of hints, tips and tricks of what you need to do next when you are using a particular command or a procedure. It is down there. I think it's pretty useful. So you can go here and make sure that these parts of the interface are actually on or off, and make sure that the most important are on. And also here you have the help messages that are usually appearing when you roll over a particular command. You can activate them, deactivate. You can also change the language, but in this case only have few languages like English and a couple more. Back to display. Here you can change. Here you can see the grid plane. You can turn on and off. You can change the maximum resolution for swatches. So right now 2K is pretty big, but you can increase more, and make sure you have enough memory there, enough RAM memory, because you're gonna need it if you want to use higher resolution, for example, for textures and materials, things like that. And let me show you here something more. Okay, well, you can go there and also try to make some tests. You can activate or deactivate stuff here and see what's gonna change. Now again, this the grid there. You can show it or hide it. You can also change the type of view. Well, something of these you're gonna find it also in the menu of the viewport in the toolbar. So most of these you're gonna find that there as well. And also here you can work with pivots, and these are pretty important. I'm gonna talk about pivot later. And background, you can change there the background, turning on and off. And I think this one also is important, the viewport rendering engine. So right now I'm using OpenGL, but if you find issues like black screen or any other issue there, like ghosting or well, anything it doesn't look okay, you can try to change the render engine in the viewport to something else. And let's move on a little bit more. This is kinematics. This is for rigging. This is animation here with the ghosting parameters. Gonna tell you about ghosting later and animation later. Manipulators, you can change the scale of the manipulators, which are those gizmos we talked about when we talked about move, rotate, and scale. So you can see there I can change the size of the handles, I can change the global scale, or the pickup, the line size, sorry, and the line pickup size. Well, you can see that there are really a lot of settings here. Just go through those and figure out what they do if you want, or maybe again when you are a little bit more expert. When you are curious about something, you can also go in the help to check what something is. Okay, you can see this is hide manipulates when you do some particular action, you can change the hide and show the manipulators. And well, I think that's fair enough for now. Then you have things about the Nurbs display. So the Nurbs objects, you can change here the curve divisions, shaded divisions. So basically the how objects are shown in the viewport, whether they are NURBS or polygons. You can do some fixing here, like how to display them. And if you want to see normals, or if you want to see standard edge, or well, you're gonna understand a little bit better when we are going to go to NURBS modeling and polygon modeling. Right now, let's just go to something which is gonna be still kind of introductory. And let's see here, this is for animation and cameras. Near clip, far clip, this is also important. This is the portion of the scene that you want to see with your camera. So default cameras means that this is the default, the one that we are using right now. So if I decrease the far clip, this means that anything beyond that measure there, now we know that centimeters is going to be cut out of the scene, but I'm going to show you that also later in an example. And files projects also here, it's pretty interesting. So this is where we can store the default projects. So it's kind of a default projects directory. And you can also change the recent history size. So you can increase or decrease the number of files, projects, and stuff that you want to keep in record to get back. Well, also autosave, I think it's a good function. It will automatically save your scene. You can set up an interval of saving so that your work doesn't get lost. And also you can choose the destination of your autosave, which could be inside your project or can be also another folder. So you're gonna have to specify here the folder where you want to store your project. So it could be any folder in your computer, just create one. Perhaps if you have like a bigger hard disk, you can save there the autosaves instead of saving everything in your main drive, which is gonna be then full. And modeling, let's see here, default geometry, as you can choose NURBS or polygons. You could choose Bezier. Now again, this is just to set some defaults, kind of, saying the software, okay, I like this more than that, and I want to start always with that. So it's not a big deal, just showing you real quick what you're gonna find here in the preferences. Then you can explore it and find it yourself. Well, this is the snapping part. So this is where we can set the snap tolerances. So snaps will be helpful later. I will show you how you can use them to work a little bit more precise, and that's where your mouse is gonna be snapped somewhere. That's the tolerance, and these are other things here. Again, if you need some help, you have the direct link here to the Maya manual where you can check all the different preferences one by one if you want. It's gonna be kind of a little bit boring, but maybe if you're looking for something specific, you can go there. That's only English for and other couple of languages. All right, so this was all for the preferences part, which is a little bit boring, I guess, but just to show you really where you can go when you need it. Now I'm gonna show you something a little bit more fun, and I guarantee you that next lessons will be more entertaining than going through preferences and basic stuff, but I think that's important to know where you need to go when you need something. Okay, so if you double click, sorry, or if you go into a little square, you can create objects using parameters. Now I'm gonna show you another way you can do that. So right there, double click, and this is, you can see here, you can set up a radius and height. Now another way to do that is to go on the little square like we did with the text. So we can define something before we actually insert it. So you can, let's go here to polygons and click on cylinder, square. There you go. So it's the same thing. You can do that many ways. And you can see that before I created and scaled my object using the transform tools, using like the view, but here I can insert a specific value. So now that I know that I'm working in centimeters, I can create a perfect pillar, and I can set a 3-meter height and a 15 centimeters radius. Also, I have some axis divisions and height divisions. These are for the structure, the polygonal structure of the object, but don't worry about that right now. The only one that's probably gonna be useful here is the axis division. It's gonna be how many segments will be the base of the cylinder. So the more I increase that value, the more it's gonna be curvy. The less the number, the less curvy will be the object. But we're gonna see that in action right now. And you can also check always additional settings and preferences here, like the axis, or you have here the round cap to close your cylinder with a rounded cap instead of a flat closing. So just like the text, we click on create, and that's gonna create our pillar here. Now you can see it's looking like a pencil, something like that, because that's the rounded cap actually. Well, it's not too rounded, but it's not rounded because it doesn't have enough subdivisions. Remember that we set 6 as the value for the subdivisions, so it's looking like an hexagon, extruded hexagon. It's not like a cylinder actually, but this is because we use a particular type of setup. So it's important when you create your object what parameters you're gonna insert. But this is definitely 300 centimeters, so 3 meters. Now I can always select my object back and go to the attribute editor. This is where I can go back and change it even after that I have created. I can change the you can see here I have some tabs. I can change material. I can change the move, rotate, and scale. I can go back and forward with these arrows. Here, for example, you can see that I've changed the position. You can see the transform attributes there. And here, these are other attributes. So like tessellation attributes and other stuff. I can also change here the name if I want, like I did in the outliner. So I'm gonna call this pillar, and that's now pillar shape. And you can see it in the transform attribute that I can move it now precisely, not just by looking at the viewport, but by watching directly the values in the attribute editor fields. So I know exactly that I can move these like 100 from the origin if I insert 100. Now you can see that this is there, it's moving on the x, so that's the x value there, and the next one is the epsilon, and then you have the z. So if I say minus 100, it's going to move minus 100 from the original position, which is always 0, 0, 0. And we can change that anytime. We can increase it, decrease it. These are absolute values, so they are referring to the world right now. and this is the epsilon right here. So if I want to place it exactly on the pavement, I just need to do some mathematics, just need to divide by 2, because the position of the pivot is exactly in the middle of my object. So it's at 150. So if I say 150, there you go, it's gonna move the pivot 150 from the bottom. So my object is gonna be perfectly on the plane since it's 300 centimeters. Well, don't worry about too much mathematics. We said that we can do that using just a visible, or we can do that approximate. We don't need to be precise if we are in a hurry. So it depends. If you're fast, if you want to be fast, you need to be less precise, but you can see here. Now let's fix also this kind of pyramid there at the bottom, because that's actually extending the pillar more than 300 centimeters. So that should be flat and should be exactly on the plane that we are using right now. So let's change that. Well, also this is the third one is the z-axis. You can go in negative with using minus movement, or you can go positive by inserting the standard values. You can also change the rotation around the x, around the epsilon, around the z. Always 3 values here for each axis. So this is rotating 45 degrees, again around the pivot. The pivot, remember, is the center point of your object, so that's your reference there. It's always gonna work with the pivot unless you change the pivot, but we're gonna do that later. But remember about the pivot of the object. Scale, you can see that 1, 1, 1 means perfectly uniform. If I increase the scale only on one direction, it's gonna make this higher. So this is not 300 centimeters anymore. It's gonna be 300 times 2. So it's gonna be 600. And again, it's just a little bit of mathematics here to take into account. But you are free not to do that. You can just go there and be approximate and fast. Shear, this is another kind of distorting feature. If you want to use it, it will distort your object a little bit. Just feel free then to make your own experiments. Okay, so we saw how we can manage transformation precisely, and then we have here a lot of other tabs and options inside the attribute editor. Just like any other thing in Maya, you will find really a lot of parameters. There are so many, so I don't think I ever used most of those, but they're there, so you can explore them if you want. Now, if we, well, so those were the transformation. Then we have this other tab here, which is the pillar shape again, where we can find some subdivisions, triangles, well, you know, some additional stuff on how you want to display the mesh. Remember that mesh means polygons, not NURBS. That's the, so you can smooth also the mesh preview. And this is something, there you go. So it's gonna be look softer. It's gonna be like soft modeling, but it's look like as a cigar right now. I'm going to talk about polygonal modeling as soft modeling later. So just you know, remember this part here. So this is how you want the object displayed in the viewport. Basically, you have some visibility. You can decide if he has to cast shadows or receive shadows or things like that, that are going to also increase the quality of the viewport render, but also increase the heaviness. And also here visibility and outliner color and things like that. Now let's go to the next one, and this is where we find the original settings. So 15 was the radius, so we can change that, make it larger or thinner. In a second thought here, we can change that anytime. So let's make it 12, and height, I can change the height again, but remember that you're gonna have to move it half of that value if you want to place it on the floor. So this is gonna be 300 centimeters. I'm gonna leave it like that. And here, the subdivision axis. So if you want to increase the curviness, you need to increase those subdivisions. And let's take off the round cap. There you go. So now we have a nice pillar without that kind of pyramid on the top, like a cone, which could be good for a pole or something that goes in the ground. Probably it looks a little bit more realistic, but we don't need it right now. So I'm gonna deactivate round cap. And let's also do some other copies here. So maybe I will leave one like this, which is an hexagon, you can see, because we have 6 subdivisions there. So think about it like a circle with only 6 sides. It's gonna look like that. It's gonna be like, it's not actually a circle, but it's a polygon. Okay, and I will Control C, Control V, or to create a copy, or you can do Control D, or you can shift and move the object aside. These are different ways you can create copies. So to show you how it's going to look different if you change a little bit the values. So you can see this is pasted pillar. I can change this, like name it pillar 2, and this is coming from a cylinder. So if I increase the subdivision axis from 6 to 12, you can already see that it's looking more like a cylinder and not like a prism. So it's a little bit better than before. Still, I can see the faces. Still, this is a faceted object. And again, I can activate or not round cap. So let's make some more example. Let's increase it even more. So the more you increase it, the more curvy will look. Let's make it 20. There you go. Now, you don't need to exaggerate that. Just think about the correct balance. And if you are in a distance, very far distance, you don't need many subdivisions. Think about subdivisions like adding polygons. You can see here, if you add some subdivisions on the caps, the rounded cap is going to look more rounded and nicer than before. It's not look like a pyramid, things like that. The only thing we don't need here is subdivision height, because the object is straight on. It's not. So you only need to add subdivisions only if you need curvy elements. If the element is straight, you don't need subdivisions. You're just increasing the number of polygons without actually affecting anything. So this is kind of a mistake. You only need to increase subdivisions when you need it. Otherwise, you're just gonna have more polygons in your scenes. This means that your scene is gonna be heavier, which means that it's gonna take more time to render if you need to do a rendering, and it's gonna also be heavier for your graphic card. So if you have a lot of these columns or pillars in your scene, a lot of copies, that's gonna eventually slow your viewport down. Now we only have 6 here. You can also set this to 0 because we don't need those top polygons there. We don't need those top subdivisions because that's a flat surface there. So we don't need curviness. We don't need subdivisions when we have flat surfaces. Okay, so this is gonna be it for this lesson. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please subscribe to the channel and support us by joining the channel. See you in the next lesson.